Good.
All right. Hi, Darun. How are you?
Andrew, how you
Long,
been?
yeah, long time to see. It's been an hour.
Yeah. So what has happened since then? Tell me all the goss.
I had dinner.
Wow, tell
Yeah.
me more. Let's see if we can dig into that.
Oh, who did we lose? What happened? We lost somebody. Oh, Megan. Anybody have anything they'd like to share? I think we saw on the page Neva was going to be able to show. I think somebody else. Anybody have anything they'd like to share? Nope. All right. Well, see you guys. Bye.
I'll share something.
All right.
Um, I had an interesting integration this morning of something that you've been telling me for a while, but I just couldn't feel it. Um, but just that I've not really been feeling. I've just been reacting to the feeling and going into this kind of hysterical state, which has been, I think, what I've been trying to avoid in all of my feeling like I'm very good at being in control of my emotions and not losing it and not, being like the women that I've seen in my life do that. And then as I've been trying to feel, um, I've actually been doing that very behavior and confusing it with actually feeling. And like I knew that conceptually, but I couldn't feel it in my body. And this morning, I was finally able to feel it. So that feels nice.
Yeah, it's interesting when we say things like, I think I feel, or I'm trying to, or I would like to, or I want. Um, it has a certain implication that we're not there. And so if you're in a field of wanting, well, what do you get more of? You get more of wanting. Now, if you're in a field of wanting and then you make a choice, well, that's different. You move from wanting to a decision to action to embodiment and manifestation or whatever. A lot of people take things like law of attraction and manifesting and turn it into a way bigger, fantastical, spiritual, metaphysical crazy land. Um, and maybe that's where comes from. Maybe there's aliens in space that are telling us this. Cool. Like, I'm all about it. Um, but when it comes to actually creating what we want in our life, um, it's really simple. Doesn't necessarily mean easy or fun or effortless. Um, but the more you get into alignment with those things, it tends to be more fun and effortless and easy. Um, but I know you've been saying things like, I want this and I'm trying. And the lack of making a choice. And so it's like we just get to stay in the wanting of it. And sometimes it almost feels like it's kind of like busy work. You know, like you ever done busy work? Like you have some dumb job when you're like really young, or I don't know, maybe still now, but and you do busy work. Like the boss comes around and you just look like you're doing stuff, but you're actually like on Instagram or something. And sometimes it's kind of like that, where it's like, but look, I'm trying. I'm doing the things. Look, see. And so when you hear these words, there's all these keywords to look out for. The sees, the looks, I knew it. They all reveal something. The try, right? That's why I'm saying what I'm saying now, because of trying to feel. You spend 2 years trying to feel. Guess what? You're not doing it. Trying to do something implies you haven't done it yet. You don't have it yet. Yeah. And so for you, I think just the emotional and intelligence piece of the the difference between reacting to emotions versus actually feeling. And it's not just you. I think a lot of people I've seen are reacting to emotions. And then this is what happens is that you have these dynamics where I'm just going to stereotype here because we know what these stereotypes are and it's easy to explain. There's no judgment of men or women, but we've culturally made these examples. You have a woman who is having emotions, and then the man who can't deal with the emotions and tells her to stop the emotions. Well, there's things going on here, right? So maybe the woman is actually feeling, and she's powerfully feeling. She's in it. But the man is completely out of relationship with feeling and emotions. And he has that shut down. He can't handle it. Or perhaps the other person can feel, but they don't have the, let's say, ability to, or the desire to be in that. And so we see things like rescuing or shutting down, censoring, because that person can't handle, they don't want to feel what the other person's feeling. So they shut down the empathy. Um, and you have just simple, let's say, judgments and misogyny, or you have cultural programming. And so it's just like shut down. We have to work, right? We have to fight the war. There's no emotions allowed in war. Survival, right? So those are things that can be coming there, despite the total functional beauty of that person feeling. But you can flip it. Now, what if the man, right, is very emotionally intelligent? He is present, right? He's able to deal with all the emotions. So checkbox. All right, his stuff is okay. Now her stuff, right? Hysterics, um, feeling sorry for themselves, um, reactivity, panic, making drama, seducing, gossiping, conniving, manipulating, emotionally manipulating, playing the victim, looking to be rescued, or even like higher level wanting to be rescued of, I'm a woman, I'm superior, that's a dumb man. If I act weak and helpless, then he will give me what I want, right? There's there's massive levels of sophistication in these manipulations. There can be. And in that instance, that woman is not feeling, for example, or faking, right? I got clients that come in and they start crying, and it's a show, it's an act. And some of them realize it, some of them don't, because they've learned how to perform since they were 5 years old. It appeases mommy and daddy who would otherwise beat them. Or they realize that if they cry, they could get the candy, they could get what they want, right? Grandma would come in and give it to them. So we learn all of these different strategies. And so to just hold these stereotypes like women are emotional, hysterical, and man can't feel, and all of this stuff, it's just it's a very low resolution of understanding of these dynamics. However, because of that, and because of the traumas and because of the conditionings, having these conversations without people going crazy and being reacting is very hard. But you can understand, you can have compassion why it can be really hard for either people in those situations, right? A man, maybe he was taught he can't feel, so he had to just pick himself up by the bootstraps. His whole family dies in a crash. He's not allowed to cry or whatever it is. Both sides, not even sides, but you understand, both men or women. Um, but because so this thing is not about men or women. It's just that in our society, a lot of these things have massive associations, and they prevent us from feeling safe in order to exploring the truth. Because if you're somebody that grew up in an environment where all of the men uh, suppress and are domineering towards the women, and every time that they cry, the men react, and you are crying on a call, not you, whoever, and you're doing it faking, and I say, stop, and this isn't real. As a man, right? That's going to just be a massive trigger. It's going to be really hard because it's just pinging all of those triggers, all those buttons, or vice versa, vice versa. So the process of discovering things requires us to penetrate these stories. It requires us to have uncompromising honesty about what is really happening. Are you willing to look at these things? Are you willing to see if you've been manipulating? Are you willing to give up the gains you get from these strategies, right? Maybe you got attention. Maybe you got some needs met. I'm not talking specifically to you, Hannah. I'm just saying in general. It requires us to be really honest about what these things get us. Back to the busy work. Look, see, I'm doing it, right? We can have a story of being a victim. There's so many different ways. You can see that it could just go in 100 different directions on how we can prevent ourselves from seeing these things. So for you, what do you think was preventing you from seeing this? What do you think made it so hard after two years of doing this work? um, A, you haven't believed me when I said you're not feeling. And B, you haven't been able to make that connection that reacting to emotions and going hysterical was different than feeling and being in them.
Yeah, I didn't believe you. And I had also never seen this hysterical side of myself to this extent. And it put me in a great deal of fear, um, as to why is this coming up? Like it's just like my whole body feels backed into a corner and terrified, and all my alarm bells start going off, and I'm like, what is going on? So then a feeling like I can't trust myself and my own response in my body, if this response isn't what I think it is. Um, and then that sets off even more fear and even more hysteria. And I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to trust you. I wanted to trust me.
Well, that's the trick. You're not trusting yourself, you're trusting the story. Your allegiance was with the story and the ego's protection rather than God and the truth or whatever it is. Because you've seen this stuff on video, right? You've had all of the evidence. Who here who here has worked with me and think they did one thing, and then I show them on the video in their body and they see that it was something else? Yeah. And how many got defensive and said, the fuck are you talking about? Right? Don't be scared. You're not in trouble. I know you can, I know, Chi. I did it too. I see this stuff. I'm like, fuck you, dude. What do you mean? What does my toe have to do with that? What does because my elbow's like this mean that I'm poor? Right? What do you mean? I'm showing up. I'm here, aren't I? What do you mean I'm not present? Where else am I? Yeah, but look at you. You're like, I mean, some of you I've showed a video where I'm literally like this. Yeah, it's very hard. It requires trust and surrender. And so many of us have been abused. So many of us have reasons to not trust. So many of us have been deceived and lied to and hoodwinked. And I get it. I mean, I'm not what I ask and what I invite um, is not logical. It is very unreasonable. Um, but for people who want to have unreasonable results in their life, got to do unreasonable things. And the biggest safety net is the video. It is your own body. Um, I'm fallible. I'm a human. I could be corruptible. Sure. All right. Look at the video. Look at your own body. Look at the results in your life. If you're very honest with yourself, you'll see that they don't just magically appear when you're shaking your hands. It's not the only time that energy has ever appeared. I was working with Darun today, and we were doing an exercise of just reading a comment of somebody. And I asked, go into it. What's behind it? It's like, what would you answer to this on the surface? What would you answer? How would you answer this question if you just took the question at face value? So, okay, feel it, go into it, go deeper. What's underneath it? And then he said something very different. And it was still. He went still. He got quiet. He went in. He went into himself. He went into the words. And I mean, it was incredibly impressive. And then it did some more things on, all right, where would this come from? What would this statement imply? What must be true through that person's lineage, through their ancestry, their worldview? How would somebody's worldview necessitate a statement like this? And so that's what I'm doing with all of you in the sessions. But I'm doing that energetically with the stories, with the movements, with the behaviors. What's underneath this? Now, our ego says you're just crying. You feel sad, right? Or the ego's saying, I'm right. What do you mean? What do you mean I'm defensive? I'm not defensive. Let me tell you all the reasons why I'm not defensive. Let me justify and explain everything I just did. Right? It's right there. It's like, okay, sure, fair. It's like, we could listen to your justification on why you're not defending for 20 minutes, or you can go deeper. What's underneath it? What is more important? What are we really getting at? And one of the strategies of the ego is to grab onto and latch onto the irrelevant things to hide in. It's not necessarily weasel language, but it's like weaselly technique. And it's like, oh, great. We'll spend an hour on the call. Sure, we can talk. You can explain why. Go ahead. I mean, it's your time, I guess. Or do you want to get to the root of it? Right? The ego is doing everything it can to protect itself and its role and its position. And they're just like tyrants. They gain power. They're going to do everything they can to keep that power because they're not going to be elected back. Once you find out these are a scam, once you find out these are a lie, once you find out this isn't who you really are, you're not going to want it back. Danielle, you want to go back to the mask? You want to go back to abandoning yourself? You want to go back to trying to be perfect?
Mhm.
No.
And you see it, and then you're like, wow, there's so much, never mind, like, I don't know who I am. Like, I get to not have to be those things anymore. It's like a relief and a release. And then I'm like, okay, I can just flow. I can just tap into that presence. I'm just like completely blown away by it because it's indescribable.
Well, that's how you know you're onto something, right? If the ego can spend an hour justifying something, it's probably not the thing. Anybody who says that they can define God doesn't know God, right? Anybody that can say, I have the ultimate definition of what love actually is and what it looks like, probably has no idea what love is, right? It's fingers pointing to the moon, right? Different cultures can you oftentimes will use um, the negative to describe God. God is not this. God is not this. Not, because it there's not enough words to describe any of it. And ourselves.
And those beliefs have been the shackles that have
Yeah,
bound us.
exactly. That's the point of the amnesia exercise in the first chapter of the book. Who are you without your stories? Like, imagine you have amnesia. You wake up the next day. You don't know your likes. You don't know your dislikes. You don't know your dreams. You don't know your fears. You don't know anybody. You don't know who you like, who you don't like, who's your enemy, who's your friend, what to believe, what not to believe, what foods you like, what foods you don't like. Like, go through that whole process where you don't remember anything. And guess what? You'll probably feel like you're being born. You're a baby. That's kind of what a baby is.
And how much do we love babies? Like, it's so easy to love babies.
Guess why? Because they don't have to learn to be lovable. They learn to be unlovable. Could you imagine if every baby born had to go through the arduous process of how to be lovable before its parents loved it?
Mm.
That's why this work is about subtraction. The more you subtract, the closer you get. Now, it's not about regressing, because that's important too. It's not about becoming a baby again, but it's reclaiming those qualities that we've hidden and suppressed and abandoned and betrayed and judged and whatever it is that we do to these things. So it's like even if you become the best person who learns how to be so lovable, you end up still justifying the lie that you weren't born lovable. You're going to have a much better life than believing you're unlovable, certainly. But it's still, right? You can still feel there's a layer over it. It's still not the thing. Because then you can lose it, right? And lose your unlovability, your lovability. And then we have to navigate certain dimensions of it because there's an inherent worth and value that we all have, but it doesn't necessarily translate to the workplace. It doesn't necessarily translate to relationships. It doesn't necessarily translate to you putting your art out into the world. And then it's like, well, how do we wrestle with the spiritual truth that I'm worthy and valuable and lovable, and then putting our stuff out into the world and being rejected and poor. And that's one of the amazing things about this work in somatics is that it's not just spiritual theory, it's not just healing, it's not just becoming more functional, right? It's all of it. It's not just about ascending out of the body and becoming an astral phantom. And it's also not just about being, an ogre caveman either. It's not about becoming rich and gaudy and abandoning your humanity and hoarding wealth and hiding away in a hole. But it's also not about being poor and struggling your whole life and being afraid your whole life and being sick your whole life. And all of those serve. It's not about not either of those either, because they serve a part of the story. If you just watched a movie and it was just like, well, everything started great and everything was great and everything ended great, the end. You're like, okay, all right, well, when's somebody fuck something up? When's something bad gonna, when's there gonna be a little fly in the ointment? And that's what we're here. We're just rubbing them up against each other and finding stuff out, and things are cracking and popping and mating and fucking and dying and fainting and kissing and eating and pooping. But as you go on this journey, you arrive to a place where you say, all right, well, I can consciously choose. What do I want? What's my vision? What do I choose in my life? Now, there's nothing we can do if there's an asteroid that just comes in and kills everybody in an hour. We can choose how we respond to that. We can choose how we show up in our life. It's not saying that we are the cosmic daddy that is the lawyer and the construction officer of the universe. It's through our aspect. How do we want to show up? What do we want? And there's a few billion people that are in a lot of suffering. I think as a species, we've got that part figured out. I think when people get to this work, I surely did, want to put a lot more focus on having a wonderful life and being more functional and actualizing ourselves and sharing our gifts with others in the world and experiencing others' gifts and celebrating them and paying for them and having more love and ease and grace and joy and beauty. I'm not saying we're going to eliminate these from the world. It's pointless. It doesn't make any sense. Or to eliminating those in ourselves, right? We're not eliminating the shadow. But chances are, if you're here reading this book, on this call, working with me, maybe you're ready to not suffer your whole life. And maybe you're not. But in this group, in this work, what I stand for in my book is that. And so some people come in and they don't like it and they leave, and that's fine. But there's plenty of people out there that are going to stand for all sorts of horrendous things. And I have made a choice to stand for and to help do the best of my certain ability to stand for other things. One's not right, one's not wrong, one's not good or bad, better or worse. We need villains as much as we need heroes. But I think I had a good enough time and I've learned plenty of lessons from being poor and homeless and is functional. I want to explore all of the things that I get to learn being wealthy and abundant and healthy and joyous and at peace and functional and creative and loving and beautiful and uh, curious. And undoubtedly on that journey, there's going to be other things that come up. So it's like you don't need to go out looking for everything that's wrong in the world or you. It's like on that journey, trust me, you'll have plenty of stuff. You'll have plenty of things to work on. So it's not about doing this work and you do 6 months or you do a year or 2 years or 5 years and nothing ever bad happens in your life. It's your perspective. It's how you relate to it. It's who you are. It's all of these other things. And then it ends up, it's not a bad, right? It's like the story, the farmer and the son.
Mm.
So what are you guys hearing? Hannah, what are you hearing? Megan, one of you.
Play your part and do the things, but come from a place of like, where's your intention and are you centered? Are you the ant on the outside of the wheel? Are you on the inside? And to get closer to that inside, but and to let it be a mystery. I mean, it's so beautiful. Do my part, but without effort. So it's like finding that groove, feeling it, and just allowing. There's so much, and it's just in one simple statement is that like how you do one thing is how you do everything. I've started realizing from this place of not trying to change anyone else, but just looking at my stuff, it shifts things, and then you start to do things in a new way. And then things change around you. I'm like, sure. It's like Hannah said last week, she said, and it really struck me. She's like, oh, she's noticing that it can be easy. And then I'm like, sure, even in what I'm doing, there's sometimes a disease. So where's that? It can be even, there's all these levels. And I can go even deeper and it can be even easier. And, in the end, it'll be okay. If it's not okay, it's not the end. So it's all part of it. Like you say, everything serves, even what you think doesn't. It serves. So who am I in that space? How do I get more to the center? And not project, because we're seeing it all through our lenses, right? So yeah, it's a practice. It's a beautiful practice. I had a question for you because
Great.
I'm like,
Ask it.
what do I ask this man? Because you give so much information, there's so much. And I came up with a question. Are you in a constant state of meditation? Do you move from that centeredness? Is that how you move through life?
Not all the time, but that's my orientation. Yeah, I am not a a saint by any stretch of the imagination. Um, but I always try to reorient myself back into that center. There is a place where that becomes your base, right? That's your default, and then you get pulled out of it, and then you come back. Um, it's kind of our cosmic base, I think, so to speak. But in life, through all of the conditioning, you have a new base, right? Outside on the wheel. It's like that's your new normal. And so for me, yeah, my new normal from this work, pandemic, but my new normal, my new baseline, is moving through the world from feeling. So I'm more in feeling based awareness than I am thinking. I still think. It's not about not thinking. It's about being in relationship. Um, so I am a lot of the time present and aware of what's happening with me and other people. So in a sense of meditation, yeah, I definitely will say that I move through the world differently than most people. I definitely move through the world differently than I did 5 years ago because of this work and this practice. Um, I get distracted, I get pulled out. Some people take me out, sometimes I take myself out. But as I go through this, all of that's less and less and less and less and less and less and less. And now it's, I would say, mostly at a place where even if I react to it very quickly, I can come back. So it's quickly coming back. Relative, not comparing to anybody else, but in my life, every year I get better at staying in that center and coming back to that center quicker and quicker. And if I'm not, then I am able to oftentimes go inside and kind of figure it out. But just like anybody else, I need feedback too. So I'm constantly getting feedback from the external space and the environment, the results of my life. Like, does this work? Does that not work? And other people that it's hard to find people that are clear enough to give good feedback. But I have, some people that can do that, and it's really amazing. So I guess it depends. I should have asked on your definition of meditation. But for me, it's this constant feeling, just being and feeling, being in my body, always reminding. You can ask people that hang around with me that it's not too long goes by without me talking about it or focusing on it or bringing it up. Unfortunately, sometimes in them, but even in myself as well. So by working with people every day, doing this work, and by aligning myself to that, I am constantly in this energy. If I stopped working with people, if I stopped doing this, then probably I would not be as in tuned as I would be.
I was thinking of an analogy the other day of stopping when I was at a stop street. I was like, you stop, you yield, and then you go. You don't stop at the stop street forever, right? And so it's to catch that. And like when Hannah was saying earlier about being hysterical, that feeling to stop, you're not going to go hysterical, but you're going to feel it. And what is that telling me? And then proceed.
Well, you said yield. There's two different meanings of yield.
Yes, yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. Stop, but you have to look around and then you do go.
Well, but also yielding, right? It's a surrender. And we yield to what we're feeling. We don't cut off. Yeah, that's perfect. Anybody else got something I want to talk about? My favorite color? Am I a saint? Am I a sinner?
I have a question. When I brought up the fear of showing up by turning on my video, I'm wondering what would, from your perspective, be the most helpful thing for me to be working on in that area.
Turn on your video. That's it. You could do it here. You could do it elsewhere. Doesn't matter. But yeah, you just got to do the thing. You could put a mask on. I mean, you could find a mask, put on your video. What's just the next step? What's the easiest win? What's the next thing?
Mhm.
Play with it, have fun with it. Because right now it's terrifying you because of some story and expectation and or trauma or fear of rejection or humiliation or so healing, fundamentally healing, what right? Because it's certainly dysfunctional, right? If you want to show up, if you want to be seen and partake in a group, and it's so debilitating that you're afraid to do that, then there's something underneath it. It's not just like, oh, I'm going to climb that 1,000-foot pole in the sky, and because I don't want to do that, like I'm broken. No, it's like, well, of course, yeah. I mean, yeah. But just showing up in life at a very foundational level, right? It reveals there's something in there that doesn't work. And if it's what I assume it is, right? It's something very uh, terrifying inside. So on one hand, it would be how can you heal that? And on the other hand, how can you also move forward? Because I've made the mistake, and this is why I wrote the chapter Stop Fixing and Start Living, because I made the mistake of putting my life on hold, putting my relationships on hold, putting my business on hold, putting my fun on hold until I fully healed myself. I had lists and lists and lists, hundreds of things. I had notebooks like this. These aren't the things, to-do list, but I had a to-do list of my emotions. Here's all my negative emotions. Here's the meridians attached to it. Here's the organ systems. Here's the how many past life and generations. How many, and it was helpful. It was great. Like I learned so much. I healed so much from it. But it was like, fuck, man, I'm adding to this list faster than I'm taking off of it. And I was like, there is no end in sight. This can't be it. Like, maybe if I spend 5 years and do nothing else, I'll get through my backlog. But guess what's going to have happened in those 5 years? Other things. And so I said, this can't be the way. Like this, like it just couldn't be. Like the math didn't add up. It's the American Federal Reserve. It's our debt. How are we like $13 trillion in debt? And A, who are we in debt to? But also B, all debt has interest attached to it. So if there's an interest attached to the debt that comes from simply printing our money in order for us to use it in circulation, by the way, if you don't know what I'm talking about, look it up because it'll blow your fucking mind, is it is impossible to pay that back because the creation of the money creates interest and there will never be enough money mathematically to ever pay it back. And so it's just an entire countries that are literally 100% always in debt. Like there's literally no way out. And it's on purpose. So I was accumulating trauma debt, dysfunction debt, unhealed debt. And it was part of my process. I learned a lot. I say, if you're in that part of your journey, do it. It's amazing. You'll get so much from it. But eventually, when you reach the place that I do, if you get there by doing that, you'll say, "Oh fuck, this math doesn't add up. I will never do anything because I'm so busy healing." And so I said, "Okay, well, it's time to start living." And so I didn't say stop healing. I didn't say stop growing, but I stopped trying to fix myself until I was ready to show up into life. I needed to be the perfect partner before I showed up. I needed to be the perfect man before I could have children. I needed to be the perfect facilitator before I could advertise coaching. I had to have made $1 million before I could start a business. I mean, just like insane shit like this that was there. And it just doesn't work that way. There is a space for containers. There is a space like this where you come in and purposely do the work. And you can make your life it, like I have. But that's just my own personal path because this is just what I feel called to do because I love it. But at the same time, I'm also just not like spending 14 hours a day shaking my hands. But in the beginning, I spent maybe a half an hour. And then I got through it and I embodied it. And then, you get on with your life. Um, it's in Buddhism, oh gosh, what is it? The mana yara shit. I forgot what it's called. But it's something like this. It's the big boat and the little boat. And the idea is that the ferryman, if you get in the boat and you cross the river to get to the other side, you don't take the boat with you. You leave the boat. But so many of us are dragging the boat along. Another analogy is medicine. If if you're sick, you take your medicine and you get better. If you're hungry and you take medicine and you just eat medicine as its food, you're going to get sick. You don't keep taking the medicine and treat it as food. Food is food, medicine is medicine. They have a different role in this analogy. Right? So many people latch onto the medicine and it becomes their life. A lot of people will find Jesus. A lot of people will find religion. A lot of people will find something. And then that becomes their new thing. Anybody here know anything about addiction? Megan. Yeah.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah. And so what happens? What happens when we just find the next thing and make it the thing? We're just doing the same thing with a different thing. Ever done that?
It's a voracious appetite.
Yeah.
It's a voracious appetite. The more you eat, the hungrier you become. The way I would describe that.
Yeah. I was sorry. I just lost it. Oh wow. Woohoo. Bye-bye. Oh, that's what it was. It was the right solution for the wrong thing. I think that was working with you, Hannah. Where it's like you have this approach to one thing and it's a beautiful approach, but it's not the remedy for the thing. It's like kindness and generosity are amazing ways to be. If someone's trying to murder you, that's not the solution to that problem. If someone's stealing from you, that's not the solution to that problem. If you've been martyring yourself and you don't receive anything and you reject help, that's not going to be the solution for you, even if it's the solution for someone else. Someone comes in and they're total yang deficiency, I'm going to have them do more yang things. If they come in with a yin deficiency, I'm going to say, do the exact opposite as the other guy. You're like, wait a minute. This is the result in life. Why are you telling them to do the opposite things? Different causes. And so, Megan, what you were just talking about is this ferocious appetite that never gets filled because you're using, let's say, food or alcohol to fill a hole that doesn't get filled with alcohol or food.
Because it wasn't made by the alcohol.
Exactly.
It wasn't made by the food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Holly,
But then I guess
think. Go for it, Megan.
no, I was just my mind's gone blank. Carry on while I think about it.
Are you sure?
Yeah, absolutely.
Holly, I think it's like the scariest thing when we're scared to do something, and then someone suggests you've just got to do it. And the takeaway I got it from my fears is that we try to do everything but the thing that we need to do, and hence the addiction, hence everything else, because we want something to take away that fear of doing it itself. But the only way you can actually, for that fear to be resolved or absolved, is to actually do the thing that causes you the fear. There's no other way around it. So I resonate with your question. Tell me what to do so that I don't feel this fear. And we're already running away because we're saying we don't want to feel it.
It's the difference between the avoidant life and the heroic life.
And so then the next step I had to take was, okay, so I have to go towards it. And then Andrew's suggestion comes into play. What's the easiest way we can take that next step? We still have to go towards it, but not in the way that we think we have to, like the big, massive step, and then maybe in your case, have a video on for the entire hour. It's like, what's the littlest way we can do that? But we still have to walk towards it. There's no other way around it. Just we can do it by ourselves. We can do it with someone else. We could do it in an empty room, but we've got to do it in some way, shape, or form.
And that's what you did when you took the first step. You were going through the field, as you shared with us a few weeks ago, which was a huge breakthrough for you. You're literally like, what do I do? What do I do? Oh, I'm in the field. It's so dark. I can't see it. What do I do? Just take a step. Oh. And that first step, right? It took you like 2 minutes to make the first step. But the second step was like 30 seconds. And then the third step was like 10 seconds.
It's
Of
an
course.
illusion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
what
what made the difference for you? How did you go from being terrified of leaving the village and having a vision and creating the life that you wanted and taking that first step?
I think a big part was you yelling at me to take that first step.
Yeah, the whips really come in handy.
Yeah, so that helped.
There's an alligator coming.
Yeah. The next part, which is the distant second, was I think just staying with it and just staying there and then say, hang on, I'm still here after a minute. I'm still here after 2 minutes. Okay. What happens if I make a choice? Because I think we just get stuck there. And I realized, hang on, making a choice means making a choice with the fear there, with that emotion there, acting in a different way. And Andrew said, make a choice, take that step. I'm like, oh my goodness, you can make a choice in this. I don't have to do the same thing and get stuck and run away. I can do something different. And that was kind of the catalyst for that next step and the next step and the next step. But it's to be in that space and decide that we can do something different.
And feel, as you said. Yeah.
And feel.
Stay with the feeling. Yeah.
That old thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the last point is you said you're still there. And that's the annihilation piece, right? Because, I'm sure Holly and myself and you and all of us have experienced that feeling that if we turn on that camera, if we walk out onto that stage, if we open our mouth to sing that song, if we ask that person out, if we approach this person, if we make that call, it feels terrifying. It is awful. And so that's why that step is called annihilation. You have to be willing to be annihilated. And it is terrifying. It's terrifying to me. It's terrifying to everybody. And then you do that enough times, you develop courage and faith and trust. You say, all right, well, the first 10 times I was afraid of being annihilated and I did it. I wasn't. Okay, well, it's probably a better chance the 11th time that I still won't be annihilated. And maybe you might get rejected, but are you still there? Maybe you might lose, but are you still there? Maybe you might get sick, but are you still there? Maybe you will be homeless. Are you still there? That's the heroic life. It is not easy. Nothing that I invite is necessarily easy. But what life do you want to live? And you can look out into the world and see the difference between the people that avoid life and hide from life and those that make the choice to show up, sometimes despite life. Hopefully not in spite of life. I mean, it's better than showing up not at all, but. And then we start getting into relationship with life. It's really hard to get into relationships with something if you're avoiding it. That's the other thing too, is you have to face it. Or you make a choice to never face it, right? So Holly, you could either be at a place where I want to show up because it's important to me and I want to get over this fear, and it would be so wonderful to see your face and be with our faces and partake and be at peace and feel connected to the community and all of that. And so you make that choice and work for it. Or you say, you know what? I'm actually totally fine, never showing my face, and I'm just going to have a blast anyway. That could work too. But you have to be honest with yourself, right? Oh, that's our alarm. All right. So it's, again, it's not about what's right or wrong or good or bad. It's not about anybody telling what they should do, have to do, what's the better way or the wrong way. It's your relationship with it. It's what you choose to have in your life. There's some people that choose to have two best friends and they could never be happier. There's other people that need to be around 50 people a week and they're never happier. But what you look for, the relationships, you look for what are the distortions? Is the person that's around 50 people doing it because they're terrified of being alone? Now it's not quite pure. Is the person who only has two friends doing it because they're terrified of being rejected, making new friends, but they actually want more friends? It's different. So this is why I talk about uncompromising honesty. You have to tell the truth. What is it that you really want? And then when you make that choice, accept it. There's consequences. But if it's true in alignment, your life is actually going to work better. And I've also found that the Tao, the sort of way of the universe, from a strictly scientific point of view, the universe is expanding. Do you want to go with the universe or against it? It is the biggest force that we can see and not see. So contraction is going to feel worse than expansion when done appropriately, because the nature of things is to expand. Maybe there'll be a point where we yo-yo and things play all the way back in reverse and time plays backwards. And contraction is great because that contraction is bringing us back to conception. Maybe. That's cool. I just thought of that now. But that's not where we're at now. And so when you can align to that Tao, when you can, as Danielle says, be in that flow, surrender to it, be in that ease, things are easier when you allow yourself to expand. In the macro, maybe in the micro, it hurts, right? You break through that shell. Sometimes destruction is required for creation. So you have to be willing to have the pain of the destruction in order to build something even bigger. Anybody else got any ideas for Holly before we wrap up? Mauricio, you've been awfully quiet.
Yes, I have been enjoying the call. Andrew, just thinking about the rejection part that you mentioned, trying to relate that part to what I'm doing now, and that is contacting women, doing cold outreach for my business. But I'm kind of resistant to this because I'm feeling rejection, like, oh my God, this woman doesn't reply to my message. She's taking too long to respond. Why is that? Oh, this other women. And I'm feeling, rejected. I know the reason why many people don't like this called outreach approach because of the rejection. So I was thinking, oh, maybe there is not that I just don't like called outreach because that's time consuming. Maybe there is something else that I don't like, the rejection part of a story. I'm being run by a story that reactivates when people doesn't respond quickly to me or something like that. So I found very interesting to reflect on what's happening behind the scenes, me talking to these women, not getting a fast enough response from them, and then playing stories in my mind on why that is happening. So yeah, that I feel uncomfortable doing that in these days. So I related to that.
Mm.
And so what's helped you that might help her? What have you learned that might be helpful?
Well, not making a meaning of, I mean, there's many meanings and many reasons why they don't answer to me, not necessarily something wrong with me.
Well, it's fun. We have a certain narcissism like that, right? It's like we just take everything personal. We make it about us. Yeah.
Yes. Just, I mean, what has worked with me is just keep going, contacting women, regardless the answer or no, and don't make any meaning out of that. Just keep going and try to not attach to the outcome, and that is it. Just despite the pain, I would say, the rejection pain, just keep going, keep going, and eventually someone will reply.
Hmm.
That
Okay.
has worked for me.
Thank you.
Not sure if this is related to you, but hopefully this will help you. Just don't be afraid of showing up, and just do it regardless the outcome.
He's been rejected by all these women. He's still alive. So
Exactly, I'm hearing this call
yeah.
despite all this rejection.
So at least you're not gonna die. So that's something.
That's something.
But it feels like dying, right? It feels
Does.
like, oh my God.
Go ahead, Chi. I saw you want to say something.
Yeah. What really helped me was when I eventually realized that I am not my trauma. Whatever that thing is you're afraid of, or that experience that happened to you, I remember at the beginning of our work together, I really felt like I had to hold on to them so tightly. I couldn't possibly reveal this horrible thing that I lived through because it's me and it's ugly. So if this thing is ugly and it's me, then I'm ugly and I can't allow anyone to see that.
Mm.
And in eventually getting to that point of allowing the stories to come up or to share the experience and the shame that that came with and the incredible amount of ick that that came with and allow myself to feel all of it and then realizing, wow, that's actually not even me. I've let it go and it wasn't me at all. I mean, it's huge because we think we are our pain. We literally identify with our pain like it's us. And in doing this work, I really began to live that I am not my pain. I can just let it go. And the thing that's left over, that's actually who I am. The subtraction over and over again that actually reveals more, which is interesting because you're subtracting, but you end up with more.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think there's definitely, well, I was at the point where I was willing to do anything. So maybe you haven't hit rock bottom, to be honest. I'm just being honest. Maybe you have, maybe it's just not, maybe the pain just hasn't gotten bad enough. You think it has, maybe it hasn't yet. And when it does, you'll do what you have to do.
Hannah's laughing. She knows. Yeah, and then if we're not ready, we just give ourselves grace.
Yeah.
Guess I'm just not ready to do that yet. I had to say that for years. It's like, well, guess I'm not ready to have any money yet. Okay, all right. And eventually just surrendering to that, showing up, making choices instead of fighting it, right? Accepting it, saying, guess what? I'm a coward, right? Guess what? I'm narcissistic. Guess what? I'm full of myself. Guess what? I'm terrified of being whatever. And then strangely, something happens. It's almost like acceptance is a part of some
Mm.
equation. Yeah, it's like, can we be okay with our shadow? It's like, I've said this 100 times. We've heard it 100 times, but sometimes you just need to hear it a different way. It's like, are we okay being that? Like, you had to be okay with being your trauma first in order to get to the place to recognize that you weren't your trauma.
Yeah.
Is that courage to accept it? Say, oh, guess I'm okay. And then through that process, healing it, you could, oh, because it's going to teach you something, and it taught you all of this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. In my divorce, that was the biggest thing in realizing that I actually did align to the partner that I got. Imagine that. I attracted it. I am responsible. And when you're going through a divorce, that is the last thing you want to hear, right? It's like, fuck no. I'm the angel. I'm the victim here. But yeah, it's a hard pill to swallow, but it's my life was so dysfunctional. I was just really, really ready to hear the truth. And I think that for me was what made the biggest difference. I just didn't have the luxury of time. Like I needed something that worked. I needed it to work yesterday. So it was like whatever I found that could possibly give me an opening, it was, I'm going to do it. And luckily, I ran into you sooner rather than later in my journey, and it made all the difference.
Yeah, it's like, that's the choice you made. Yeah. All right. You needed something. All right. Well, there's consequences. You're not wrong for it. You're not good for it. It's just, that's what you had to do. That's what you told yourself. That's what you did. And you did it. And it did something, and it did some other things. Okay. What'd you learn from it? Okay. What do you got to heal from it? Okay. And then trusting and surrendering that that was part of your process. Good God, how much what I had to go through in order to be here sharing this stuff and writing this book and doing this work. Like, you think you guys got issues? You know what I had to get through to get here sucked. But I chose to use all of that to learn. Everything serves, even what doesn't. Your marriage didn't serve, but it served.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Our dysfunctions don't serve. Well, but they serve something until they don't. And then they served. Suffering. This is a hard one for me, and I think for a lot of people. You can't take someone else's suffering away. We need our suffering until we don't. You, poor person, you give them $1 million. A few years later, they're going to be right back there. Probably worse. They haven't embodied it. They haven't learned the lessons. They don't know how to manage that much energy. They've done, you maybe you guys have heard of Tom's, the shoes. You buy a pair of shoes, we give a free one to this country. Well, it fucked everything up. It did good at first, but guess what? All of the people, all the workers, all the shoe factories that went out of business, all those people, right? It had all of these secondary and tertiary, whatever, effects. And it like totally screwed up their economy. People stopped working because they could just get stuff for free. People were disempowered. They didn't take jobs. I mean, all of this stuff happened from someone's, desire to do that. The way to hell is paved with good intentions kind of thing. And, we think it's going to help rescuing people, but it actually took their power away. It's like, you poor people, let's come here. Let's show you. Let's do the right thing. And it actually takes their power away. It's part of why we say don't rescue people. They don't need to be rescued. Who do you think you are? That you're better than them? That you're going to save them from themselves? God, when I heard this, it's like, what do you mean I'm arrogant for trying to help somebody? Putting my hand on them when they're in pain? Now, there's a context for it, right? It doesn't mean you never touch anybody ever when they're feeling anything, but what's behind it? Oftentimes, it's something else, right? It's has, a fly in the ointment. All right, I think that wraps it about up. Anybody have any last final words?
I just want to say thank you to the people that responded and for your insights. I really appreciate you.
Thank you already took your first step, Holly, by even telling this to us. That's a step in itself and a choice you made.
I agree.
You know what you could do? If you turn your webcam, just face it towards the wall. You don't even have to be on camera. Just turn the video button on. We'll never see you.
I just turned on one of those little avatar things. That would be so distracting, though.
Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you guys so much. Appreciate all of your insights. You're teaching each other, and this is wonderful to see people showing up, different clients having opportunities to show up in new ways, and you get to see each other. And I appreciate everybody on the Awaken group sharing stuff, and Danielle and Elaine. She's here somewhere. I think I saw her face. You guys are getting a lot. So if you notice, the people that are participating the most, we're hearing the most from about how their life is changing and improving. Just hashtag just saying. Yeah. It's almost like how you do one thing is completely unrelated to anything else in your life. All right, guys. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Let
you.
everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Good night and good morning.
Bye.